This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Mintliff, and I have Nelson Tepfer, CEO of ProCFO Partners, with me today. And Nelson, I love your newsletter. If you're not receiving the newsletter, head over to the website, get in touch, become a subscriber to the newsletter every month. There's some insights, there's some industry stuff, there's some episodes to share with you. But this one I thought was interesting because we're in December, we're talking about the end of the year, and really you kind of have a mindset in this one of if you think you're doing okay, don't forget the complacency is the thing that can bring you down. And if you're not doing okay, maybe it's time to have a deeper look at things. And some of the insights that are shared is, and we've talked about this in the last few episodes, maybe we're headed into a recession. Maybe we're struggling with some things, inflationary concerns. All kinds of stuff is kind of swirling around. And I think a lot of companies and organizations are in a sort of wait and see. They're a little bit afraid to take any step. And I wonder what you think about that. I wonder if you think that that's the smart thing to do, or if we're going to find ourselves feeling like that was a time for opportunity and we blew it, or that was a time for hunkering down and we blew it. And what do you think we should just kind of be doing here at the end of the year? How do we set ourselves up for next year? But how do we also constructively put this, whatever this year has been for us, in some sort of context?
So, Chris, always enjoy our conversations. Always great when we get a chance to have this type of discussion. So this time of year, as you saw in the newsletter, is a little bit about reflection. Yes, there's an aspect of looking ahead, but to the point that you just asked, it's a little bit about what actually happened this year. What did or didn't work for us and why is probably very, very important. And the why of those questions, both sides of it are equally important, but the why allows us to think about how we want to continue to make decisions around this moving forward. For instance, we planned this year was going to be a certain amount, and this is the actions that we took around this. Well, first of all, did all of those plans come true? And did we hit whatever targets or goals that we had actually achieved? If not, then the why is like, okay, was there something wrong with our assumptions? Did things happen beyond our control? Did we not plan for it correctly? That's the reflection part that becomes really important this time of year, because it's not just about did we hit a revenue number, right? Did we hit 10 million? Did we hit 100 million? Whatever that is. I mean, yes, that is important, and that's that does define some measures of success for some people. But the reflection part is more about the process that you went through when you set those goals and targets. What went into those kind of assumptions? Because looking ahead towards next year, where no one really knows what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of people think they know what's going to happen, but no one really does. When you're looking about this for your company, it becomes about how will I plan for this kind of success? So the reflection part becomes important because it almost defines where you've been, what worked or didn't work for you, and therefore what you want to do as you begin to look ahead towards next year and the years beyond.
That's just such a great perspective, and I feel like it's analogous to some other things that we can look at, right? Like maybe you as a human being, you start the year thinking, I really want to run a marathon by the end of this year. And in November, you start thinking, oh, well, I better sign up for that marathon. Instead of in January, you're running your first mile, or you're walking around the block. You're doing the small things that add up to the big things. And when you set that big goal, you reverse engineered what needs to happen for you to hit that goal. And we've talked about this before. What are you going to measure? But also, what's your why behind some of that? So do you find, as you're working with your clients and as you're, as a leader of an organization, is this the time to look at those metrics that you set up and scrutinize them? Or is it the time to say, what did you even take the right approach to begin with a year ago? And are you going to just repeat those mistakes? Or is this the time now where you're going to finally, as you said, do something new or different to reach new or different goals and opportunities and achievements?
And that's why that reflection is usually that first step. Because reflection is about, again, what happened this past year that was in line with what you did and why you did it. What happened according to plan? What happened not according to plan? What happened beyond your control? What were the things that were within your control that you put over, should have, or thought about doing differently and chose to ignore or chose to do that way anyway? So that reflection is a very good foundation point for this time of year. Again, many companies, this is their busiest season, so obviously not that much room to reflect. But for many other organizations, this is when things start slowing down a little bit and does give time for that kind of reflection. And so we think about that reflection period exactly in line with what you just said, is to understand what was it that did or didn't work for you this year? Because that's the foundation for you to begin to plan, okay, therefore, what do we want to change for next year? Or what do we want to change about our approach for next year? If our goals remain the same, what do we want to change in how we do this next year? Meaning for instance, it's not always a bad thing if you didn't achieve what you were expecting to. There are definitely factors that go into place. I've had conversations with many business owners where it's like, well, we tried to do this and it didn't work. And what we really drill down with them is, okay, when you were making this decision, if you had to make the decision today again with those same parameters, with all the information you had, what would that decision be? And very often you say, okay, great. Well, with the information we have, we made the right decision. It may not have worked out the way we planned on it. We understand why afterward, but it's that process of how we make the decision that becomes really important. It's the process of how we put certain things in place, of how we allocate resources, how and why we choose to spend or invest differently within different parts of the company. Those kind of decisions become important in that reflection period, because that will often define, okay, as we look ahead towards next year and the year beyond and the year beyond that one, how are we going to make those decisions moving forward? Are we going to change the way we make those decisions, or do we have a good process for making those decisions and planning accordingly?
You know, I frankly think that there's a skill set around that, around being able to make the sorts of perspective goals or sort of criteria that you're talking about, because it's really easy. A lot of leaders, as we talked about, throw numbers up on the board, or they'll just sort of say some percentage of something, or they're used to a formula that they've been using for whatever reason, for better or worse, success or not, that every year they just sort of tweak or apply. I think it's somebody special who can, I guess, put into motion something that's a little bit more nuanced. First of all, do you agree? And two, do you have some advice for what if things didn't go the way that I wanted them to go? And especially, what if things out of my control? Do I just have to sort of, wipe my brow and move on? Or should I be thinking differently about what I can and can't control?
So after that reflection, yes, we get to that readjust or reset kind of phase. Okay, this goes again, something we referenced in that newsletter is, this may have been a terrible year for some organizations for various reasons. Again, there are many issues beyond your control. This time of year, after you reflect on that, it's like, okay, now what are you doing to change that for moving forward? What does that begin to look like for you? Because the answer may be, well, you're doing things entirely incorrectly. Or the answer is you were doing things correctly, but you still need to change it because the environment has changed. If cost of capital is a big part of your success type of thing because of the way you were going to market, obviously with increased cost of capital with what's been going on over there, that has a very big impact on your company. And that definitely needs to change, because just to keep doing that again and again and again, assuming it will level out, is probably not the best approach at this point in time. So yes, there are recognizing the things that you need to change because of what may have changed in the underlying economics or environment that you're operating in. And then there's understanding that, yes, it didn't work out the way we may have wanted to, but we're still on the right path and we should still go. And that fine balance, to the point that you referenced, of navigating both sides, because we definitely have worked with organizations where it was like, no, this is still the right thing to do, and they continued running headlong until they hit a wall. And that's obviously not what we want any organization to go through. So it's recognizing that that's why we so focus on the process for how we make decisions rather than simply the decision itself. Because that process becomes something you can then use again and again and again as you're weighing these decisions in your organization. It's not always about, no, we're on the right track, we're on the right track, we're on the right track. It's recognizing the process of saying, is this the right decision we should be making at this point in time? What is the information we need to make this decision? What is the insight we're looking for to recognize if we're successful, if we're going to move on this path? Because that level of insight and knowledge will allow you to chart that path more accurately and recognize when do we need to change course. Because now we recognize that we're shifting to the left way. We've gone way off course over here. We really need to reset this. But without that knowledge to understand what will be those success factors, without that insight along the way, again, whether it's financial, operational, economic, or any number of metrics or any number of things that are involved in that level of insight, but it's understanding what you need to know along the way that will say, yes, we should keep going. No, we need a course correct, or we're on the wrong path entirely.
Can you talk me through a little bit of process around how I should be kind of constructively reflecting? Is this something the executive team gets together in a room and we all ask ourselves 3 questions? Is it sticky notes all over the wall? Is it company wide? Is it just me in my own space for 2 hours with a cup of cocoa, sorting it out in my journal? Like what do you think is a constructive way for me to sort of put the past in perspective?
So the short answer is yes. To all of the above.
Isn't it?
And the answer, and the reason why is because very often it does depend on the organization. Or is this a leadership kind of focus or not, or is this a personal focus or not? There's nothing wrong with it being one versus the other. It's just recognize and go, what is it? What is it we're trying to gain out of this kind of exercise? Some companies do this, entire company-wide. We've seen that happen. Some companies do it with just the leadership team. Some people do it with, just some of the C-suite and not even the full leadership team. It's not always a one-size-fits-all. But the process you go through is becomes important as to say, and again, there are various levels to this. So yes, some organizations may just be, 2 hours with your cup of cocoa and saying, this was a great year, yay to me type of thing. And that's okay. If that's what's good that's what works for that person and that leader, there's nothing wrong with that. For some of them, it's a full day process where they tear through every single thing they did this year, what worked, what didn't work, and why, and what are we going to change next year? Why are we going to change this for next year? So there's very rarely a one size fits all. It's just recognizing the importance of going through an exercise like this at whatever stage or whatever format works best for you at this point in time.
And one of the things that I've heard you say today is that next thing, the what do you do now, is a separate next iterative conversation.
Yeah, and that's why we start with reflect, because then it turns into the reset, the reimagine side of things. We start with reflect because, okay, we're sitting here now at the end, middle of December, facing the end of 2022. So it starts with that reflection as well. What did we do this year or the past several years? Or, this launch we've been working on for 3 years, how has that happened? Do we want to still do this or more? That's where the questions begin to happen. And that's where the reflection stage leads to that, because that sets the foundation for that reset. It's like, okay, no, we need to change everything we're doing or reimagine. Or we can say, great, now everything is working over here. Let's keep going on this type of thing because this works. We're going to go and reinvest in all of these different areas. We're going to go and, yes, a lot of R words today. Yeah. I'm going to see how many I can get to. That's okay.
I like it. Do you feel like it can be sort of a natural reaction to, in the middle of sort of looking back, you immediately start, okay, so I'm going to change this or I'm going to do that. Should I be a little bit more patient? Should I just sit in this reflective for a minute? Don't feel like you got to solve it. Just sit in that for a minute so that you can kind of get all the information.
It is important to separate those two. Yes, very often we have the natural inclination, like, okay, went down here over here. So we'll almost look at it as, okay, great, that's for the next phase, jot it down, put it on the side type of thing. We'll get to that. No, don't lose track of that idea or thought that you had, but let's just focus on this part of the equation for the moment. And yeah, there are definitely some leaders where they need to jump all over the place. That's the way they process and that's the way they think. So this is where it becomes like, what works best for you and how you approach this exercise. From our perspective, it's just make sure you start the process on this exercise because of how important and valuable it is for this strategic planning or goal setting or end of year reflection type of period.
Let me put you on the spot a little bit. How's it going for you? What have you been reflecting on? What has ProCFO Partners been reflecting on? How has that been shaping your understanding of where you've been to now where you want to be going? Don't give us all your trade secrets, but how's it going?
Well, for us, reflecting this time of year, because we actually did our own planning sessions recently, reflecting this time of year is we are probably most proud of the number of organizations we've been able to help. That's one of the things that drove us to form this and build this organization. That's one of the things that still drives us most. So reflecting on that is definitely something that's been very important for us. How many organizations we've been able to help, the talent we've been able to attract to our team who enjoy working this way, who are aligned with what we're trying to do to help all these organizations grow and scale. That's been something for us, which we always need to be mindful of. In our role as leaders, very often we're always about, yes, but we could be doing this more, and we should be doing this, and we think about this. So the reflection becomes important. It's yes, there's lots of things still to do, but look at what you've done already.
What a
Look at what
great
you've accomplished.
perspective, Nelson. And a lesson for us, I think, to take away is an idea of celebration needs to be part of that. You're absolutely right. The first instinct I had was, let me scrutinize every little thing I did wrong. I love that you started with, there's a lot for us to celebrate. Let's not even dilute that with the yes, but let's just celebrate that, That's cool.
It's not an easy mind. It's not an easy mindset. For many of us who naturally are always, the problem solvers and the thinkers, we naturally go to, well, yes, but we automatically go to that frame of mind. And so sometimes we need to almost force ourselves to, separate those two. Not that that's not an important part of the process. It is, because we naturally go into, but we can also do this. Great. We're going to get to what that looks like as we think about what's ahead for next year. But for right now, let's reflect on this past year and what we've built since you started your organization. What's driving you to keep going at this stage?
Nelson Tepfer has some powerful R words for us today. I love the idea of reflect, reset, reimagine, reinvest. It's good stuff, Nelson. It's been a great year.
Keep going for yeah.
It's been a powerful conversation, and there's a lot to pick through. And if you're out there and you're sitting there kind of thinking, I haven't done this or I haven't done this very constructively, as always, let's talk about it, because these are important things to do for your business to grow, for you as a leader to grow. And I think they're often ignored, or they're rushed through, or they're couched in, the wrong sort of goal setting, or not even wrong necessarily, but inefficient or incomplete. And I think you're painting a broad picture for us, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Always enjoy our conversations.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.